Bien, bonjour, merci de nous regarder en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le jeudi 30 avril. Je commence avec nos annonces du jour. Tout d'abord, pour rappel, nous n'aurons pas de rendez-vous de midi demain, en raison évidemment du 1er mai. Je vais donc dès aujourd'hui vous donner un aperçu des activités de la présidente pour la semaine prochaine. So the countdown has begun to Monday, 4th of May, 3 p.m. This is when the Coronavirus Global Response Pledging Marathon will start with a worldwide online pledging event hosted by President von der Leyen. With the coronavirus global response, the European Union is joining forces with global partners to kickstart a worldwide pledging effort with the initial goal of reaching 7.5 billion euros. This is just the beginning, as more will be needed in the future. The money collected will help accelerate the development and deployment of universally available and affordable vaccination, treatment, and diagnostics. You can find more information on the website, europa.eu/global response, which you can see, I hope, behind me. Yes? No. Anyway, you will see europa.eu/global-response. We will also have an off-the-record technical briefing on the coronavirus global response pledging event today at 1 p.m., so we can show the link again at that point in time. Puis, j'ai encore quelques rendez-vous dans l'agenda de la présidente à vous signaler pour le mercredi 6 mai. La présidente présidera bien évidemment la réunion du Collège des commissaires, comme d'habitude, et elle participera également à 2 vidéoconférences, d'abord avec les représentants du Parti populaire européen des Balkans occidentaux en fin de matinée, puis dans l'après-midi avec les dirigeants de l'Union européenne et ceux des Balkans occidentaux. Nous avons déjà présenté notre contribution à cette réunion hier, comme vous le savez. J'appelle maintenant Viviane pour une annonce sur le Fonds européen de solidarité. Viviane.
Merci beaucoup et bon après-midi. So today I have another announcement on the European Solidarity Fund. The European Commission is proposing today 279 million euros of financial support for Portugal, Spain, Italy and Austria, following the natural disasters that happened in these 4 countries in 2019. This funding comes on top of the 800 million for 2020 that are available under the EU Solidarity Fund. The aid package is divided as follows: 212 million for Italy, 57 million for Spain, 8 million for Portugal, and 2.3 million for Austria. The Commission's proposal will now go to the European Parliament and the Council for adoption, and once the proposal has been adopted, the financial aid can be paid out. On Monday, I informed you about the request we received from Italy regarding the Solidarity Fund for the reasons related to coronavirus outbreak. I can tell you that we've now received also a second request from Austria related to coronavirus, but we are collecting and will deal with all the applications in one batch, not on a first-come, first-served basis, so that we would be able to distribute the available resources in a fair way to all the member states that are hardest hit by this health disaster. And you will find more information in our daily news and the press statement.
Okay, thank you very much, Viviane. Finally, I have a housekeeping announcement to make. Due to the global online pledging event, which I mentioned before, hosted by the President, we will exceptionally not have a daily online press briefing on Monday, the 4th of May, because we will be using, in fact, the technical capacities of our press room, among others, the interpretation and the video conferencing, and they require significant adaptation, in fact, already over the weekend, so as to be able to host the pledging event on Monday. But as you know, we never close shop, so we will remain available to you, actually tomorrow and Monday as well, obviously. We stand ready to assist you with any inquiries that you might have over the next days. This brings me to the end of today's announcements, and so we will start with your questions. I see a question from Nikolai Nielsen. Nikolai, we will pass you the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I have a question on migration. Apparently, there are reports coming out of Malta that the Prime Minister's office is organizing private pushbacks from Maltese waters into the Libyan search and rescue zone. I don't know if you could comment on this, but if this turns out to be true, I mean, what kind of consequences would Malta stand to face in terms of EU law? Thank you.
Albert.
Thank you. So first of all, let me maybe say that we are, of course, aware of the reports of the incident in question. We regret all loss of life in the Mediterranean. Nobody should lose their life trying to seek safety and refuge. The duty to render assistance to persons or vessels in distress at sea is an obligation under international law. We expect member states to respect their obligations under international law and ensure the safety of rescued people. Now, as regards this specific case, we are, as you were saying yourself, not in a position to comment on an ongoing national investigation. Moreover, since the coordination of search and rescue operations is outside of the Commission's remit, we cannot provide you with a legal analysis of the situation in this specific case, nor am I in a position to say anything about what would be the consequences under this or that scenario. But as a general comment on this situation, we encourage member states to continue working together and working with Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, in the spirit of solidarity to ensure the continuity of search and rescue activities and to find solutions to disembarkations in this particularly challenging context. And as ever, the Commission stands ready to coordinate relocation efforts once disembarkations take place.
Thank you. May I have a follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead, Nikolai.
Thank you. Earlier this week, Martin Schiffer from DG Home said that if a migrant is in territorial waters, the EU law, the EU acquis applies, and that this for us is a fundamental principle. Could you explain some of the EU laws that would apply in a case like this? I mean, in terms of migrants that are in sort of multi-territorial waters and are then being pushed back. What are the EU laws that would apply in that case?
So the EU law applies in territorial waters of member states. That includes, for example, the Asylum Procedures Directive, which I believe is something that our colleague may have been referring to. The EU law does not apply on high seas. And that is a really fundamental difference. And EU law, indeed, apart from a specific case of operations coordinated by Frontex, does not regulate search and rescue operations. So, as I said, I'm not really in a position to give you any kind of legal analysis of this specific case, but these are the different aspects that need to be considered as regards the applicability of different legal regimes. And it's also important to keep in mind that the search and rescue region is not the same as territorial waters. Territorial waters are much smaller than the search and rescue regions of different member states and other countries.
Okay, I see a lot of hands raised. I would ask you please to unraise your hand unless your question is addressed to Adalbert. Thank you, so that we can stay focused on this subject initially. Okay, I see Caroline. Caroline, your question to Adalbert. Hi.
Hi. Yes. The Commissioner Johansson tweeted that Portugal and Slovenia are about to engage in the relocation of miners from the Greek islands. And I wanted to ask for a little bit more detail. For example, if you could provide us with some numbers, and also what's the latest state of play on the operation in general. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the Commissioner referred to Portugal and Slovenia as the next member states in line for relocation of unaccompanied children and young people from Greece. We're of course very grateful and very much encouraged by member states' willingness to participate in the scheme that we launched on the 6th of March. Now, I will have to disappoint you about the specifics of the numbers. We are not really in a position to disaggregate specifically the 1,600 at least figure that comprises the overall volume of the scheme. But we would encourage you to check with the individual member states about what they are ready to communicate. And as regards the state of play of the initiative, so as you know, two member states, two relocation operations have so far taken place. That is to Luxembourg and to Germany. And we continue to work very closely with member states, with Greek authorities, with international organizations and the European Asylum Support Office to first of all put in place, so finalize really the standard operating procedures in order to make sure that, that we can have rules agreed on how to conduct this operation on the ground. We're also working on, in the first instance, transferring unaccompanied minors from the camps on the Greek islands into shelters on the mainland in order to then relocate them to specific member states from there. So I do not think that that I can give you an operational up-to-the-minute update right now, but this is roughly the state of play at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a quick follow-up, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Regarding the number of member states who are willing to proceed with this, do you have any update on that, or is it still the same number of members? Because I'm not sure Slovenia was part of the group in the beginning.
That is correct, and indeed is very observant. With Slovenia, we're now at 11 member states.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right. Mose, I presume you have a question also for Adalbert.
Thank you. Not exactly. It's more about the coronavirus crisis.
So it's not for Adalbert. Okay.
It's not about migration, no.
So hold on then. Let's see if we have any other questions for Adalbert. Caroline, your hand is still raised, I suppose. Okay, thank you very much. So I don't see any other questions for Adalbert. So Mose. Sorry, Patricia? No. So Mose, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Eric. Yes, I have a question about so-called digital contact tracing by mobile phone applications. We know that the Commission published a toolbox a few weeks ago about such applications, and we seem to be very much in favor of them on the condition that they comply with data protection and privacy rules. That could be a problem because to be effective, they would need perhaps a majority of mobile phone owners to install that application. On the other hand, we know that that Commission also accepted so-called states of emergencies in several member states, as long as they are limited in time and proportionate. So my question would be like this, I mean, have you considered a kind of derogation of these, let's say, data protection rules in order to enable some kind of centralized installation of tracing applications?
Okay.
And have you, yeah, okay, that's the question. Thanks.
Thank you, Mose. We couldn't hear you very, very well, but I understand that the gist of your question is relates to the balance between the protection of data and the effectiveness of the application, and whether we're willing or looking into a potential change into those rules. This would be a question for Johannes. Johannes, can you hear us?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Moser. Yes, Moser, we were in touch already bilaterally on this question. So for us, it's very clear. Tracing apps have to be used voluntarily. This is a fundamental principle for us. The president said it, Executive Vice President Vestager said it, Commissioner said it, Commissioner Breton, Reinders. So for us, this is a fundamental principle, and our toolbox, the EU toolbox, which is a toolbox by member states, and the Commission's guidance on data protection as like for the tracing apps only apply for voluntarily installed applications. You're right, the more people use these apps, the more they work. So it's important that we convince a high proportion of the population, as you rightly say, to use the apps. We want to do that, or we believe the European way is to convince people that they can trust these applications. This is why they need to respect the framework which we set out for these apps, and this is why discussions with member states continue in the eHealth network several times a week on this, not only for data protection, also for interoperability and for cybersecurity and other aspects. This remains for us the fundamental principle. You also need to understand that the apps are not the only measure. They only complement traditional tracing, which is paper-based, as you know, and also come together, for example, with increased testing capabilities and so on. So it's not the only measure. I would also maybe ask back the question how you would enforce an obligatory regime, but this is of course for you to think about, not for us. So in conclusion, voluntary is the fundamental principle for tracing applications in the EU.
Can I ask a very quick follow-up question, Eric? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I wonder if, let's say, considering these state of emergencies in some countries, or in several countries, perhaps up to 20, I wonder, would it make a difference, let's say, of if a country would, let's say, enact a special law during the crisis to make this compulsory, such a tracing app for a limited time under certain safeguards?
This is not really a question for Johannes, I believe. Yeah. This is, on top of it, Mose, a very hypothetical question. And as you know, that's not our favorite rule of the game in this press room. So I'm afraid that we're not going to go into considerations as to what would happen if a member state were to adopt such a specific law. I'm sorry about that. You can, I'm sure yourself, try to extrapolate what the consequences would be, but we're not going to get into that here in the press room. So I see 4 hands raised. I just want to check whether they are for Johannes on the tracing app, or ask you, if it's not the case, to unraise your hand. Okay, thank you very much. This is starting to work very well. So the next person, I don't see any other questions for, yes, Daniel. No, okay. Daniel, is your question for Johannes? Daniel, you have the floor. Yeah, no, don't, we will unmute your mic. There you go, go ahead.
Okay, so it's not for Johannes, it's on l'agence exécutive pour les consommateurs de la santé et de l'agriculture.
Ok. Oui, je pense qu'il n'y avait plus de questions de toute manière pour Johannes, donc passons à cette question qui sera pour Balázs. Vas-y.
Oui, donc c'est une question sur l'agence exécutive pour les consommateurs, la santé, l'agriculture et l'alimentation. Je voulais savoir si vous pouvez confirmer l'information selon laquelle la Commission aurait décidé de transférer cette agence du Luxembourg à Bruxelles. Et si oui, si vous pouvez nous expliquer les raisons pour lesquelles la Commission a décidé cela.
Merci Daniel. Balach.
Oui, bonjour, effectivement. Donc, laissez-moi commencer par dire que pour le début du prochain cadre financier pluriannuel, donc le MFF, le Collège a réaligné les mandats des agences exécutives pour la période 2021-2027 afin de s'adapter aux priorités politiques de la Commission von der Leyen et pour s'adapter aux nouvelles structures de programme. De façon générale, bien évidemment, le but est d'obtenir un maximum de résultats sur des questions telles que le climat, le numérique et l'innovation. Et la nouvelle mise en place prévoit la création d'une agence européenne de l'innovation et la réaffectation de programmes précédemment gérés par l'agence exécutive des consommateurs de la santé, de l'agriculture et de l'alimentation, qui ne se poursuivra pas sous la forme actuelle, ainsi qu'un certain nombre de transferts de tâches entre les agences basées à Bruxelles. Donc, en ce qui concerne votre question spécifique, j'ai quelques éléments à partager avec vous. Tout d'abord, il ne s'agit pas d'une décision qui a été prise à la légère, bien évidemment. Il ne faut pas interpréter cette décision comme un engagement réduit envers la présence du personnel de la Commission au Luxembourg. Donc, il y a un certain nombre de facteurs qui se prononcent en faveur du transfert de toutes les tâches de mise en œuvre déléguées à Bruxelles. Donc, les directions générales, tout d'abord, ont souligné que la proximité géographique de l'agence est essentielle à la collaboration entre les agences exécutives et les directions générales qui délèguent les tâches. En outre, la localisation de toutes les agences exécutives à Bruxelles permettra aussi de mieux coordonner les portefeuilles des agences et d'améliorer les possibilités de synergie entre les agences. Et finalement, je voudrais y ajouter que la Commission continuera de contribuer à une présence plus forte du personnel au Luxembourg dans d'autres secteurs, par d'autres moyens. Et d'autres secteurs, je fais référence par exemple au développement des secteurs financiers, numériques et juridiques.
Merci Balach.
J'ai un follow-up. Est-ce que je peux...
Vas-y, mais je crois qu'il t'a donné tous les éléments de follow-up dans sa réponse initiale. Mais vas-y.
Oui, je voulais juste savoir, le gouvernement luxembourgeois avait exprimé sa préoccupation quant aux conséquences pour les 80 personnes concernées. Là, je n'ai pas vraiment entendu de réponse là-dessus. Donc, ma question, quelle est votre réaction par rapport à cette préoccupation exprimée par le gouvernement luxembourgeois?
Donc, votre question concerne le personnel alors de l'agence exécutive. Donc, en ce qui concerne le staff, le personnel, bien évidemment, ils seront encouragés à transférer à Bruxelles en gardant leurs tâches. Alternativement, la direction générale HR leur aidera à trouver un autre emploi au Luxembourg ou sinon, ils recevront des allocations de chômage en fonction de leur contrat.
Merci Balach. Je ne pense pas qu'il y ait d'autres questions sur ce sujet. Je passe donc la parole à Giovanni.
Ça marche ?
Oui, absolument.
Alors, je pense que c'est directement pour toi. Donc aujourd'hui, on a vu les données sur la chute du PIB de la zone, c'est le plus grand de toujours. Et le commissaire Gentiloni a dit que le moment pour l'utilisation du Recovery Fund, c'est maintenant. On ne doit pas attendre. Et ce qui m'a frappé, c'est qu'hier, la vice-présidente Jourova avait dit que pour le Recovery Fund lui-même, il serait déjà ambitieux de commencer par janvier 2021. Alors, je voulais te demander, est-ce qu'il y a des différences à l'intérieur de la Commission sur les temps d'application, de création de ce fonds? Quelle est ta réaction sur cette demande de faire très vite avec, déjà cette année avec le Recovery Fund? Merci.
Merci Giovanni. Non, je crois que le message est clair. la Commission, et cela a été dit hier lorsque la vice-présidente Jourova vous a donné le compte-rendu officiel du Collège, la Commission est tout à fait de l'avis qu'il faut que nous trouvions une solution qui permette une solution transitoire, qui permette de déclencher et d'encourager des investissements avant l'entrée en fonction du nouveau cadre financier multiannuel et de ce que nous appelons l'initiative de relance, the Recovery Initiative. Il y a une question de sémantique, si vous voulez, en quelque sorte là. Le nouveau cadre financier et l'initiative en tant que telle ne peuvent intervenir qu'à partir de début 2021, puisque cela exige évidemment des décisions dans ce cadre temporel-là. Mais nous reconnaissons tout à fait qu'il faut que nous trouvions une solution pont entre maintenant et le lancement du nouveau cadre financier. Et ce que nous avons dit, et que j'ai eu l'occasion de dire à de nombreuses reprises ici déjà sur le podium, c'est que nous étions en train de réfléchir à la meilleure manière de parvenir à cette relance des investissements au-delà de ce qui est déjà sur la table, qui, comme je vous le rappelle, est extrêmement important en termes de mesures prises par les États membres d'une part et par les institutions européennes de l'autre pour soutenir l'économie dans le cadre actuel de la crise et pour faire face à l'urgence. Donc il n'y a pas de différence d'opinion du tout, il y a peut-être eu simplement une différence de sémantique.
Tout de suite, si je peux,
je t'en prie.
Pour mieux te comprendre. Tu parles de solution pont. Donc ça voudrait dire que on pourrait commencer avec un recovery fund déjà bien avant que le janvier 21 avec cette solution pont. Ça veut dire que le janvier 21 se réfère que à l'utilisation du budget du niveau MFF. Est-ce que vous pensez à d'autres solutions?
Tout d'abord, ce qu'il faut dire, Giovanni, c'est que la Commission va venir avec des propositions. Or, tu comprendras bien que je ne suis pas en mesure, avant que la Commission n'ait fait ses propositions, de te présenter en détail le contenu de ces propositions. J'essaye de t'expliquer un certain nombre d'axes qui structurent notre pensée. Et ces axes, c'est que, bien entendu, comme l'a dit la présidente de la Commission à de nombreuses reprises, nous pensons que l'élément central du plan de relance, c'est le cadre financier multiannuel. Et que pour renforcer ce cadre financier multiannuel, il faut notamment que nous ayons une initiative de relance, Recovery Initiative, qui permette de dégager les moyens qui vont permettre, entre autres, de renforcer ce cadre financier multiannuel. Donc ça, c'est bien dans le cadre post-1er janvier 2021. Mais nous reconnaissons aussi qu'il faut, avant que cela ne puisse rentrer en application, que nous ayons une solution qui permette déjà d'enclencher un certain nombre d'investissements avant le 1er janvier, donc dans la deuxième moitié de l'année. Comment est-ce que cela s'appellera exactement ? Quelles seront ses modalités précises ? Il va falloir attendre que la Commission vienne avec ses propositions. J'espère que j'ai pu clarifier tes questions. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur ce sujet ? Je demanderai, I would ask all those who do not have questions on this but on other subjects to unraise their hand for the moment. Okay, Tommaso.
Good morning or good afternoon. Apologies. My question is not exactly on the recovery fund, but on the ESM credit lines. It is connected. May I ask it now, or do you prefer later?
Yeah, I think you go ahead. Can I say something? We are now saying recovery initiative. Okay, recovery fund is vocabulary that was used prior to the European Council, completely legitimate. What the Commission is working on now is something which we will call the Recovery Initiative. because it's about both how you actually collect the necessary funding and what you spend it on. But yes, go ahead with your question on the ESM.
Okay, it is just because I have read on an Italian newspaper, Repubblica, this morning that the ESM has sent to the national government the term sheet of the credit lines which are going to be modeled on the ECCL. There is a passage in the term sheet reported by the newspaper which says that the European Commission is going to clarify the monitoring and surveillance in agreement with the two-pack rules. Given that the two-pack rules, if I recall well, foresee the possibility to modify the memorandum of understanding later on, I just wonder if the Commission will be able to exclude the introduction of a ex post conditionality, as it is called. I think it would be so because Commissioner Gentiloni has just explained that political decisions are going to prevail on old rules. I just wonder if the Commission is confident to be able to exclude an ex post conditionality in the credit lines, which will be made available to the member states by the ESM. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll call Martha to the podium, but you're actually asking the spokesman on economic affairs to comment on what the Commissioner on economic affairs has said. So I'm afraid that what we will be able to add is rather limited. Martha.
No, indeed, and I also won't be able to comment on any leaked documents, of course, in line with our practice. I think on the issue of conditionality, I can only recall what the Eurogroup has agreed on the 9th of April, and which was, of course, also endorsed by the European Council on in its 23rd of April meeting. And let me quote, "The only requirement to access the credit line will be that Euro area member states requesting support would commit to use this credit line to support domestic financing of direct and indirect healthcare cure and prevention-related costs due to the COVID-19 crisis." As you know, work on the operationalization of the ESM pandemic crisis support instrument is ongoing, so I won't be able to give you any details, further details at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Other questions on this topic overall? David is irlandais. David Carretta.
Oui, merci, merci Eric. Deux questions. Une pour toi, si tu peux clarifier la question du nom de ce recovery, quelque chose, parce que hier c'était instrument, aujourd'hui initiative.
Peut-être que
avant encore c'est plan. So let's try to find.
Autant pour moi, peut-être que je me suis trompé moi-même dans ce qui serait évidemment impardonnable, mais j'avoue que c'est vrai qu'on est dans un système tellement mouvant qu'il se peut que je me sois trompé de terme. Donc je vais vérifier ça et je reviens vers toi tout de suite. Quelle est ta deuxième question ?
La deuxième question, c'est à propos du ESM et du term sheet, parce que le term sheet en discussion était déjà discuté en mars. Je voulais savoir, à propos du rôle de la Commission, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire surveillance renforcée? Techniquement, je voudrais savoir qu'est-ce que ça veut dire, parce qu'on peut donner beaucoup d'interprétations qui ont comment dire, des conséquences politiques assez importantes, surtout en Italie. Je voulais savoir qu'est-ce que ça veut dire surveillance renforcée. Merci.
Alors, avant que Martha ne réponde, je tiens à saluer ton sens du détail et ta précision. C'est effectivement bien Recovery Instrument que nous avons dit hier, autant pour moi. Et merci de la correction. Martha.
Oui, David, comme je viens de l'expliquer à Tommaso juste à l'instant, voilà, nous n'allons pas commenter sur des documents qui n'ont pas été encore publiés ou qui sont en train d'être discutés. En ce qui concerne ta question, donc la Commission n'a pour l'instant pas encore pris de décision sur l'implémentation de cet accord que je viens de mentionner à l'instant. Et de toute façon, tout système de monitoring ou de surveillance sera bien en ligne avec l'accord politique qui a été conclu à l'Eurogroupe et au Conseil européen. Et c'est tout ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Ok, merci Martha. Alors, je vois Roberto. Roberto, est-ce que c'est une question sur ce sujet?
No, actually, no, it's for you, but not on this subject.
Okay, so hold on, please. Moses, same thing, I suppose. Okay, Patricia, you had a question. No, okay, so then let me move to David Hagenhorn, who had a question on passenger rights, I believe. Thank you, Martha. David, hold on, we give you the floor. Just 1 second. Hagenhorn, Politico.
There we go.
Yeah,
Hi,
there
Eric,
you go.
how are you?
Yeah.
I wonder if you could address this issue regarding passenger rights, and particularly if the president has a view. We know that there are some airline carriers in Europe that were struggling financially and in need of government assistance at periodic points long before coronavirus came along. And if in fact it's the president's view that financial support, quote unquote, bailouts for commercial passenger airlines should be done on the backs of European citizens who have come to rely on these passenger air rights, for example, to potentially get refunds, much in the way that they've come to rely on the Commission ending roaming charges around the continent.
Thank you, David. The president's view is that the Commission has to come up with an overall solution to how we on the roadmap to lifting of containment measures, on guidelines for the restoration of connectivity in Europe, re-establishing the freedom of movement in Europe, supporting the tourism industry and protecting passenger rights. All of these things hang together in a way, and we have said that we will be coming forward with proposals in these different areas. I think it's very important that we do not deal with the issues piecemeal, but that we take into account the fact that these issues are very much interlinked, and it is in that framework that we are operating. All right, now I have a slight technical issue in the sense that my application seems to have frozen. And I can no longer see who wants to ask for the floor. Jonathan. So who? Okay, Anna Vandensky, we'll pass you the floor whilst I try. Oui, vas-y.
Bonjour tout le monde, Anna Vandensky d'Africa Diplomatic Magazine. J'ai la question concernant la République centrafricaine parce que cette semaine, M. Borrell a parlé avec le président Touadéra et moi je pose la question, est-ce qu'ils ont déjà évalué la perspective de réformer la Constitution afin de prolonger le mandat du président et rapporter les élections qui sont planifiées pour le décembre cette année. Donc, ces trois choses, c'est réforme de la Constitution, prolongation des mandats du président Touadéra et effectivement le rapport des élections à la République centrafricaine.
Merci. Ce sera une question pour Virginie. Virginie, est-ce que
Oui,
tu...
en effet.
Voilà.
Bonjour. Effectivement, le haut représentant, vice-président Joseph Borrell a eu un entretien téléphonique avec le président de la République centrafricaine, Monsieur Touadéra. C'était mardi. Nous avons publié un communiqué de presse et dans ce communiqué, nous avons souligné que le haut représentant avait rappelé le soutien de l'Union européenne à l'organisation des prochains scrutins présidentiels et législatifs qui sont prévus pour la fin de l'année. Nous considérons que ces élections constituent une étape essentielle dans le processus de démocratisation et de réconciliation, ainsi que le processus de paix pour le pays. D'ailleurs, nous soutenons financièrement ce processus électoral avec un montant qui s'élève déjà à 17,5 millions d'euros. Donc, voilà ce qu'on peut dire sur la question à l'heure actuelle. Pour ce qui concerne un éventuel report, ce n'est pas un élément qui a été discuté. Nous parlons d'élections qui doivent se tenir à la fin de l'année. Donc voilà, c'est tout ce que je peux dire à ce stade.
Merci Virginie. Puisque nous sommes sur le thème des relations extérieures, je voudrais que nous essayions de continuer sur ce thème. Donc je demande aux personnes qui voudraient poser une question sur un autre thème pour le moment de baisser leurs mains. Voilà, et nous reviendrons bien entendu vers vous après. Je vois que Yuri Sheiko a une question.
Hello. Yes, do you hear me? Yeah, my question is on the foreign affairs. And this week, International Crisis Group published a report on the war on Donbass, how to make more progress in the peace settlement there. So I have two questions on this. First, will the EU consider offering to Russia such a new dialogue on security architecture in Europe? And the second aspect to it, what is your view on the proposal to adjust sanctions, EU sanctions regime to make it more flexible? Thank you very much.
Peter.
Thank you, Yuri. Although we engage quite closely and quite regularly with the think tanks, we do not have the habit of commenting on their output, on their reports and suggestions. But let me address the 2 points you raised in your question. One is the relations and cooperations with Russia. The EU policy towards Russia is based on 5 principles, which were agreed by the EU member states based on the developments mostly linked to Ukraine back in 2014. So one of these principles is saying that we cooperate with Russia where there is clear interest for the EU to do so. However, there is also another principle which says that any substantial change in our policy and in our cooperation, in our dialogue with Russia, depends on the full implementation of the Minsk agreements. This is very important for us. Now, when it comes to sanctions, the reason why they are in place in relation to Russia is the breach of international law, namely or notably with the illegal annexation of the Crimean Peninsula, and also due to the destabilizing actions of Russia in the eastern part of Ukraine. The economic sanctions are linked to the fact that they are linked and reviewed based on developments on the ground, and they are linked to the full implementation of the Minsk agreements, as we have stated so many times. So I would just underline and repeat that although the sanctions are constantly under review, this review is conducted based on developments on the ground and demonstrable and visible, tangible changes in Russia's behavior in these policy areas to which the sanctions are linked. And needless to say that the sanctions regime and everything what has something to do with sanctions is on the side of the Council. That means is being discussed and decided by the member states.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Are there other questions on external relations? Roberto, I don't think you're I still see that you have your hand raised, but I don't know if it's on external relations.
Well, actually, it's a mix among you and external relations because it's about China.
China is usually external relations.
Actually, I would like to understand if you can confirm the phone call between President von der Leyen and the Chinese Prime Minister, if you can provide us any details about the issues, the topics that have been discussed, specifically if the President expressed any concerns about possible disinformations by China in the EU, as the External Service remarked.
I can confirm that a phone call took place. It was entirely centered on the forthcoming pledging initiative. We can hear you type the news at the same time.
Oh, sorry.
Roberto, please perhaps just hold on 1 second. So I can confirm the phone call, indeed, with the Premier, but it was entirely focused on the forthcoming pledging initiative, which will take place at start next Monday. That was the only subject. Mose, is your question on external relations?
Peter, as you perhaps knows, a Swedish-Iranian doctor, in fact an expert in disaster medicine, was arrested exactly 4 years ago in Iran, sentenced to death. His name is Jalali. He was not released some time ago when the Iranian authorities released about 1,000 persons from prisons. And I know that the previous High Representative Mogherini raised his case with Iran. So I would like to ask if also Borrell has raised the case of this person in order to enable his release from Iranian prison.
Thank you, Mose, for this question. I'm not sure if I understood everything because the connection was breaking up, but when it comes to the detention and prosecution of dual nationals who are at the same time EU nationals in Iran, this is something which is always a source for concern of the countries concerned, basically of which these people are also citizens. So they pursue their own consular and political track on it, supported, of course, by the European Union. So in general, whenever there are issues with partner countries where the EU citizens are involved, of course, the EU gets involved when the country concerned asks for support or coordination or whatever we can do, because one of the basic principles of the EU is solidarity, and issues of our citizens being persecuted or being detained or in prison are regularly raised in our contacts with the partners. It doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be raised at the highest level if it's not necessary, but they are constantly being raised on appropriate levels in our dialogue with the partner countries' authorities.
Thanks. A quick follow-up, if I may.
Yeah, Mose, please, but quick, because we are slightly running out of time and we have other issues still.
Yeah. Thanks. In this case, he has a double citizenship, also Swedish, and also Iranian, and Iran doesn't recognize his Swedish citizenship, so the Swedish ambassador in Iran is not allowed to visit him in prison, so that makes it even more important and urgent, I suppose, to raise his case on EU level.
But what's your question?
My question is if really High Representative Borrell has done that, because he had taken several contacts with the Italian, with the Iranian authorities.
I believe that Peter has answered your question already. So I understand you make a consideration that reinforces what you perceive as the need, but Peter has already answered your question. Okay. I would like now to come back to Patrizia, who has been asking for the floor for a long time. Patrizia.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Eric, good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, thank you, because I've been trying to ask this question for a while.
Sure.
So the question was for Adalbert in the beginning.
Okay.
So I would like to know the state of play of the efforts of the Commission in trying to coordinate the distribution of the migrants saved at sea by Alan Kurdi and Atamari, and currently on a boat for the COVID-19 quarantine. I would like to know if there are member states answering the call of what is the state of play? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. Albert.
Thank you, Patricia. And I'm afraid I don't have any specific update for you on that. We are, as ever, in contact with member states in order to understand what is possible and facilitate the contacts between member states. But that's essentially as much as I can say at this point.
Okay, thank you, Adalbert. I have Gabriella, who has raised her hand. Gabriella.
Hi, thank you. This is Gabriela Baczynska at Reuters. What I wanted to ask is to go back to state aid, please, and just to make sure, and thanks, Ariana, for the answers you've provided so far. Under the temporary framework from mid-March, has the Commission rejected or not approved any state aid mechanisms or schemes that came its way from member states, please? Or have all of them that have been approved are essentially all of them that were presented to the Commission?
Okay, Ariana?
Hi, Gabriela. In general, we don't comment on contacts with member states before we take formal decisions on them. As you might have seen, all the decisions we have taken are positive decisions. We haven't taken any negative decision.
Thank you. And in terms of the relationship or the tension between generous state aid that is being handed out now by member states and the integrity of the single market, to what extent are you or are you not concerned that state aid approvals now can actually distort the competition on the single market?
The Commission has adopted a state aid temporary framework, as you rightly recalled, which sets horizontal rules applicable to all member states, enabling them to use the full flexibility provided by state aid rules to support the economy in these difficult times. This increased flexibility foreseen by the temporary framework allows member states, including those which would not have sufficient resources to implement general measures applicable to all companies, which would fall outside the scope of state rules. For example, we're talking about wage subsidies and suspension of payments of corporate and value-added taxes or social contributions. This allows them to target their support selectively to those sectors in the economy that are mostly in need during this difficult days. Furthermore, the temporary framework provides safeguards, such as limits the support that member states can grant to each company. And this aims precisely at avoiding that member states can overcompensate their own companies, preventing undue distortions to the level playing field in the single market. We believe that a targeted and proportionate application of EU state aid rules ensures that national support measures effectively help companies which are affected by the economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak, while at the same time limiting undue distortions to the internal market. Without state control, aid granted by one member state would risk undermining measures taken by another member state and ultimately the level playing field in the European Union. So in other words, state aid control is necessary to preserve the EU single market and the cohesion within the Union, and to enable the European economy to recover from the current crisis and bounce back even stronger afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much, Ariana. Thanks, Gabriela. Are there any other questions before we move to the technical briefing? I do not see any, so I'm very happy to welcome my good friends Per and Kurt, who will now raise the curtain on the forthcoming pledging event. So please stay connected to the system, and I hand over to Anna for the management of that meeting. Thank you very much. See you here next Tuesday, but of course we remain available in the meantime through the usual other means. Thank you very much.